Good morning. Pleasure to be with you and back in Durban. It sort of seems like the tourism whirlwind doesn't end. We spent a very full time over in Derby here. But it's certainly a privilege to come and be with you this morning to talk through the whole connectivity issue. I'm going to be addressing it more from the tourism side, and I think there's enough esteemed colleagues on the panel to approach it from the aviation side, although I will be touching on one or two areas of sort of aviation. Briefly, for those of you who are not familiar with SATSA, the South African Tourism Services Association, SATSA is an organization that represents 700 companies and associations on the inbound side of tourism. We have 330 odd DMCs or inbound operators, similar to Thomson's Africa that you heard about from Craig Drysdale. We have all the major hotel groups, all the leading lodges, small hotel groups, guest houses, all car rental companies, adventure tourism operators, and airlines. So it's the definitive body that really speaks to inbound tourism. It's where the rubber actually hits the road. Briefly, just a bit of my background. Thrust into tourism in '98 as the special advisor to Minister Pallo Jordan, basically with the mandate to make tourism happen, and we got on with the job, and there was a huge boost, as many of you would know, around that time with injections from the Business Trust, and then government matched those, and we got a massive boost in terms of the funding of tourism into South Africa. I was then the MD of Tourvest Inbound Division, which is a big competitor to Thomson's, and they often sort of boast and jostle for who's the biggest. And then after that, I spent sort of 12 years as running my own tourism consultancy, doing essentially growth strategies in the SADC region and talking about how we could best sort of get precisely what this topic is sort of aimed at, facilitated, to get better connectivity, to get growth, and to get greater tourism into the SADC region. And it's from that perspective that I'll be chatting to you today. My message is a little bit less jingoistic, a little bit less optimistic, and a little bit less sort of the rose-tinted glasses that I've been hearing this morning. I'm actually a bit of a pessimist in this regard, because I still think we're doing the basics incredibly poorly. And I think we could be doing that a lot better. And I don't think we're talking to the right people. I think we have a whole group of people talking amongst themselves, and we're not actually engaging the key people who actually make tourism happen, and that is quite simply the trade. That's the way tourism happens. So just an opening statement. Tourism, with its low barriers to entry and ability to create jobs quickly and in rural areas, is often touted as a panacea sector. And when you think about this, intuitively, tourism could and should be seized on by governments in Africa as a priority sector that can deliver real returns. And this is particularly true when we look at what Africa has in terms of its natural resource endowments. We're not, in the next sort of 20 or 30 years going to become a major manufacturing sort of base, and even service level sort of industries are fairly underdeveloped on the continent. So when you have a look at this and one examines the overall economic growth strategies of many African countries, tourism is always up there. It's always put up there in the national plan as a priority sector. Then you've got to just come back and actually ask ourselves the really sort of sobering question: why then does Africa continue to attract such a low proportion of international tourism? And the answer, to my mind, lies squarely with the lack of real investment by African governments into developing and marketing their countries as tourism destinations. And moreover, when we have pockets of best practice, we don't actually go and have a look at those. And when we have them, they're not widely communicated, and they're not learnt from. So what I'm saying is that in terms of the reality of the situation, other than sort of examples such as South Africa and to a lesser extent Kenya, possibly Tanzania, tourism is, in terms of the actual amount of money that is spent in terms of promoting it by national tourism promotion agencies, it's to put it bluntly, it's abysmal. Any idea of the national tourism budget of Mozambique? National marketing budget of Mozambique, 4.8 million rand. How do you market a country with 4.8 million rand? What you do is you pay people to go and sit at the odd trade show, and they sit there and wait for people to come and speak to them. There's no money to do any constructive marketing. There's no money to do joint marketing agreements, to do proper branding, to actually do all the things that should be doing. And you contrast that to what South Africa spends if you take South African tourism and our provincial tourism budgets and small towns. I mean, Knysna has a bigger tourism budget than Mozambique. We spend over R1 billion marketing this thing. And that's where I say where best practice is not seized upon. So everybody talks tourism, but when you get outside of South Africa and you look at what's actually spent on it, it's actually very little.